Welcome back to Token Teardown, Dyno-Test Certified, where we roll crypto projects into the garage, jack them up, and see what they're really working with under the hood. Today's build is Zebec Network, ticker ZBCN, and the question is simple. Is this thing a Dodge Durango SRT Hellcat, a three-row family SUV hiding a supercharged 6.2-liter V8, ripping mid 3 seconds 0 to 60, towing, hauling kids, groceries, and still gapping sports cars at the light? Or is it just a Durango GT with some nice wheels and a loud exhaust? Now listen, yes, we will do price predictions. We understand that's everybody's favorite lane. But before we talk targets, upside, and moon math, we've got to answer the question that actually matters. Does ZBCN deserve a spot in your bag? Or should you make room for something that's actually going to produce? Because price is just the scoreboard. First, we check the engine. And before we get into it, this one is a viewer request. So if you have a project you want us to throw on the lift, leave it in the comments. Your project might be the next one we put through a full token teardown. And now, shout out to Christian, the man most of you know as Triple X. This teardown doesn't happen without him. While everyone else is skimming headlines, he's living in GitHub, buried in white papers, reviewing actual code, tracing how the system works end to end, and pulling it apart piece by piece to see what holds up and what doesn't. He lives in the trenches, so we don't have to guess. Brother, thank you. We couldn't do this without you. All right, now that the question is framed, before we touch price, tech, or predictions, there's only one place to go next, because ideas are cheap, roadmaps are easy to draw, execution is the only thing that matters. So, before we ask what Zebec does, we've got to ask who's actually building it, who's turning the wrenches, who's been in real systems before, and whether this pit crew has shipped anything that survived the real world. Zebec was founded by Sam Thapalia, and this is not a first-time builder learning in public. Sam started coding at 13 years old, building ERP and business software for real companies. Systems that don't get to kind of work. They either run operations or they get shut down. He later moved to Silicon Valley, studying computer science and information management at Menlo College, right in the middle of fintech, venture capital, and compliance-heavy startups. Not theory, not vibes, real proximity to scale and regulation. Before Zebec, Sam co-founded ASME, an AI-driven media and analytics company. This wasn't a pitch deck startup. It shipped real software, earned innovation awards, and resulted in US patents tied to video commerce and analytics. And that background explains a lot. When Zebec launched in 2021, the mission wasn't to launch a token. It was to fix something broken at the infrastructure level, how money actually moves. Payroll, real-time settlement, compliance-aware payment rails. That's why Zebec didn't chase meme cycles. They chased plumbing. The team around Sam reflects that same mindset. Engineers and operators from fintech, enterprise SaaS, regulated environments, and high-throughput systems. People who've dealt with payroll cutoffs, ACH delays, card networks, KYC, AML, and uptime guarantees that don't tolerate excuses. They've raised capital from Circle Ventures, Coinbase Ventures, Solana Ventures, firms that don't fund tourists and don't skip diligence. And the real separator? They didn't just build tech. They bought distribution. Through Payroll Growth Partners, Zebec acquires or partners with existing payroll companies, businesses that already have customers, compliance frameworks, and operational staff. You don't do payroll M&A if you're scared of audits. You don't enter these lanes if you plan to disappear in a bear market. Garage translation: this team isn't learning how to race. They've already built cars that passed inspection, stayed on the road, and didn't blow up under load. Now that we know who built it, let's talk about what problem they're actually trying to solve. Because this is where most crypto projects lose the plot. Money today still moves like it's stuck in a busted transmission. You work every day. Your money doesn't. Payroll runs on batch systems, which just means everything happens in clumps. Weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. That made sense when paperwork moved by fax. It makes zero sense in an internet-native world. Zebec's core idea is something they call streaming finance. Sounds fancy. It's not. It simply means money flows continuously, second by second. Instead of working 2 weeks and hoping payroll shows up on time, your compensation moves as you earn it. Think of it like this. Your paycheck is no longer a deposit. It's a fuel line. As long as you're producing value, fuel is flowing into the tank. That single change fixes a lot of real-world problems. For workers, no waiting on payday. No floating rent or groceries on credit. No stress when payroll is delayed. For companies, real-time payroll accounting. Cleaner cash flow visibility. Easier global payments without juggling bank rails. For the system as a whole, less idle capital, fewer intermediaries, fewer points of failure. And Zebec didn't stop at payroll. They expanded the build into a full real-time money stack. Continuous payroll, instant payments, on-chain treasury management, and Zebec cards that let users actually spend what they earn in the real world. That last part matters, because crypto doesn't win by being clever. It wins by being useful on a Tuesday morning. Garage translation? This isn't a weekend toy or a track-only car. It's a Hellcat-powered family hauler, built to handle daily life, real responsibilities, real weight, and still pull hard when you need it. So the problem Zebec is attacking isn't speculative. It's this. Why does money still move slower than information? Zebec's answer is simple. It shouldn't. And to make that happen at scale, you can't just have a good idea. You need the right drivetrain underneath it. And that's where we go next. Now, this is the part where a lot of projects start waving their hands and hoping nobody asks follow-up questions. So let's actually explain how Zebec works, what it runs on, and why it's built this way. Zebec originated on Solana, and that matters. Solana is the base engine here. High throughput, low fees, fast finality. That's why Zebec started there in the first place. Payments need speed and consistency, not 15-minute confirmations and fee roulette. But Zebec also learned something early. Payments can't fight for block space. If NFT mints, meme trading, or random congestion slow things down, that's annoying for traders. But it's unacceptable for payroll. So Zebec didn't just stay a normal Solana app. They built their own specialized execution environment on top of Solana, called Nautilus. This is why you'll hear Zebec described as a layer 3. Here's the clean way to understand that. Solana is the main highway, the secure, high-speed foundation. Zebec built a dedicated express lane that only handles payments. That express lane is Nautilus. Instead of every payroll stream competing with everything else happening on Solana, Zebec isolates payment execution into its own environment, tuned specifically for continuous payments, predictable fees, low latency, and zero surprise slowdowns. Under the hood, Zebec uses a modular design. One part of the system handles execution. That's where balances update and streams flow. Another part handles data availability, meaning transaction data is stored, verifiable, and accessible without clogging execution. Why split it? Because payments don't need fancy logic. They need certainty. When payroll is streaming, nobody cares how expressive the smart contract is. They care that funds arrive on time, balances update smoothly, and nothing randomly freezes. Zebec also thinks differently about transactions. Most blockchains are built around the idea of send, wait, confirm, repeat. Zebec is built around streams. Once a payment stream is opened, value flows continuously, second by second, without requiring constant new transactions. It's less like sending Venmo over and over, and more like opening a valve. That's what makes Zebec work for salaries, subscriptions, contractor pay, machine to machine payments. And because this runs in a specialized environment, those streams don't get interrupted when the rest of the crypto world starts doing donuts in the parking lot. Then comes the real world bridge. Zebec connects this on chain streaming system to stablecoins like USDC, payroll software, card networks, and off ramps, compliance systems, so users don't have to feel Solana. They don't manage gas spikes. They don't babysit transactions. They just get paid. They just spend. It just works. Garage translation, Solana is the Hellcat motor. Zebec built a reinforced transmission, cooling system, and tow package so it can haul weight all day without overheating. This isn't tech built to win benchmark screenshots. It's tech built to survive. Payday traffic, real users, real regulations, and real money moving every second. And once you understand that drivetrain, the next thing we have to look at is the fuel system. Because even the best engine in the world doesn't matter if the fuel mix is wrong. All right, let's hit the part everyone pretends to understand. Tokenomics. It sounds scary, but it's simple. Tokenomics is just the fuel system. How much fuel exists, how fast it comes online, and whether demand can burn it. That's it. Zebec uses ZBCN as the fuel for the network, not as pay gas every click, but as the economic layer tying together payments, incentives, fees, and long-term sustainability. Zebec started with ZBC, then migrated to ZBCN at a 1-to-10 ratio. Why? Because this network isn't built for chunky transfers. It's built for streams, micropayments, second-by-second flows, even machine-to-machine value. You need granularity for that. So the supply expanded to 100 billion ZBCN, not for fun, but so the system can actually function at scale. Now, the part we don't dodge, unlocks. Unlocks are just fuel entering the tank. Tokens held by the team, early backers, and the ecosystem come online over time. That creates pressure. Not automatically bad, but very real. If adoption grows faster than supply, the engine runs smooth. If supply outruns adoption, price struggles, no matter how good the tech is. That's why this doesn't trade like a meme coin. It's an infrastructure asset, more like a work truck that gains value with usage, and less like a lottery ticket. The long-term thesis is simple. As payroll volume grows, as cards get used, as real money flows through the system, demand absorbs supply. Zebec has talked about tools like fee capture, buybacks, and ecosystem incentives to help close that loop. But let's be adults. Short-term unlocks matter. Timing matters. Long-term, usage decides everything. Garage translation, this isn't a nitrous hit. It's a fuel system built to run continuously. And that's why the real question isn't, is ZBCN going to pump? It's, is real money going to keep flowing through this system fast enough to justify the fuel coming online? And that's what we look at next. Who's actually using it? Talk to the real banking system. Zebec cards are live across dozens of countries, usable anywhere MasterCard is accepted, which means people aren't just earning money on-chain, they're spending it in real life. There's even crossover work with World Mobile, tying real-time finance into decentralized connectivity infrastructure. That's not theory. That's Rails touching Rails. Now let's put real names on the table, because this is where credibility either shows up Or it doesn't. Zebec isn't running on anonymous enterprise interest. There are real companies and protocols using the payment rails. Over 200 projects and organizations have integrated or used Zebec's streaming payment tech, including UXD protocol, SOTA protocol, and other teams that needed real payroll and continuous payment tooling. On the infrastructure side, Zebec didn't partner sideways, they partnered up the stack. They're part of the Circle Alliance, tying them directly into USDC rails and regulated stablecoin infrastructure. They've worked with Zero Hash, the same backend that powers Walmart's fintech arm, expanding compliant on-ramps and off-ramps. They've integrated with NatPay, giving compatibility with FedNow, RTP, and ACH, meaning this isn't crypto payroll, it's payroll that talks to the real banking system. Zebec cards are live across dozens of countries, usable anywhere MasterCard is accepted. So people aren't just earning money on chain, they're spending it in real life. There's even crossover work with World Mobile, tying real-time finance into decentralized connectivity. That's not theory, that's Rails touching Rails. Now, let's balance that with reality, because this isn't a promo video. Here are the real red flags. First, token unlocks. ZBCN has scheduled unlocks tied to early allocations and ecosystem incentives. New supply comes online over time. If adoption doesn't absorb it, price feels pressure. That's math. Second, regulatory exposure. Zebec chose the hard road. Payroll, payments, compliance, cards. That builds trust, but slows velocity. Regulatory shifts or partner changes matter more here than for a meme coin. Third, execution risk. Partnering with or acquiring payroll companies is smart, but integrations are hard. Systems and compliance frameworks must merge cleanly. And finally, narrative risk. This isn't a hype coin. It doesn't pump just because the timeline feels good. It can get ignored during speculative cycles. That's the trade-off for infrastructure. Now here's the part I don't want to miss. An upgrade narrative is forming. Zebec has already shown a pattern, moving from a simple Solana app to a dedicated network, launching Nautilus as a specialized execution environment, expanding into cards, payments, and treasury tools, tightening compliance and real-world integrations. The next phase isn't flashy. It's about hardening the system, deeper payroll integrations, more enterprise tooling, more volume through the same pipes, continued refinement of Nautilus as a payments-first Layer 3. Garage translation, they're not bolting on wings. They're upgrading, cooling, suspension, braking, durability, so the vehicle keeps running when the road gets ugly. And that's why this teardown matters. If you're only here for hype, this isn't your lane. But if you're asking whether ZBCN deserves a spot in a serious bag, this is the kind of project where execution decides the outcome, not memes. And now that we've covered real users, real companies, real rails, real risks, and real upgrades coming down the pipe, that brings us straight into the ISO conversation. A formal ISO certification is reportedly targeted for 2025 as part of Zebec's broader compliance roadmap, alongside other regulated milestones like MiCA and FCA alignment. Let's be clear, ZBCN itself isn't ISO 2022 certified in the way banks or payment systems are certified. Tokens don't get stamped with that label, but the infrastructure Zebec is building is being positioned to operate inside ISO-compatible rails. That's a meaningful distinction. Industry analysts and independent writers have pointed out that this isn't random. Zebec's architecture, continuous settlement, stablecoin payroll, compliant messaging, and real-world payment connectors puts it closer to ISO-aligned systems than many Layer 1 or application layer chains. Garage translation: this isn't a project that wants to sit outside banking language. They're building to be able to talk to banks, payment processors, clearing systems, and enterprise infrastructure using a common financial grammar. That's not hype, that's strategy. And it fits exactly with their roadmap. Upgrades and strategic roadmap. What's next? This next phase isn't about flashy features. It's about institutional connective tissue and global scaling. ISO certification goals. Moving Zebec's infrastructure toward recognized global security and payment standards by end of 2025. Zebec Net eSIM rollout, a decentralized SIM solution for borderless access to payroll and payment services in 70-plus countries. Regulatory milestones, pushing toward MiCA and UK FCA compliance, which further embed Zebec in real-world money rails. Enterprise tooling upgrades, deeper payroll integrations, treasury asset management modules, API enhancements for corporate adoption, Layer 3 hardening and optimization, continual refinement of Nautilus to support even higher payment throughput, and deterministic execution. They're not throwing on wings, they're upgrading transmission, brakes, compliance, and institutional visibility. So when people ask whether Zebec can play with banks, the answer isn't some Twitter myth. They're building the plumbing that could actually talk to banks. That's a totally different game. And now that we've laid out real adoption, real rails, real risks, real upgrades, and alignment with global financial standards, there's only one lane left to explore before we hit the dyno. Price scenarios. All right, this is the part everybody waits for, everyone's favorite part, the price scenarios. And before we go any further, I want to say this clearly. We don't sell Hopium in the garage. We don't do guarantees. We don't do rocket emojis. What we do is math, structure, and realistic outcomes. And for this section, I want to give a big thank you to the head of technical analysis in the garage, the one who lives in spreadsheets and scenario models so you don't have to. Lulu, you really are amazing. These scenarios don't happen without her. All right, let's get into it. We're using a $20 trillion total crypto market as the framework here. Not today's market, a future, fully built cycle market. And we're starting with where Zebec is right now. Today, ZBCN is sitting around a $200 to $250 million market cap, with a token price right around 0.3 of a cent. That's our baseline. From here, we run 3 gears. Scenario 1, cruise control. This is the boring one, and boring is underrated. In this scenario, Zebec doesn't dominate headlines. It doesn't become the hottest thing on crypto Twitter. It just works. It keeps the same relative market share it has today, while the total crypto market grows to 20 trillion. If that happens, ZBCN lands somewhere around a $500 to $550 million market cap. That puts the token roughly in the half a cent to just under 1 cent range. No fireworks, no moon talk, just steady appreciation tied to relevance. This is the infrastructure hold scenario. Scenario 2, traction boost. This is where execution starts to matter. Payroll volume grows, enterprise tooling gets adopted, cards get used more. ISO-aligned rails and compliance start paying dividends. In this case, Zebec doesn't just keep its market share, it earns more of it. If ZBCN roughly doubles its share in a $20 trillion market, you're looking at about a $1 to $1.2 billion market cap. That moves the token into the 1 to 1.5 cent range, give or take. This is the real traction scenario. Not hype, not miracles, just adoption, doing what adoption does over time. Scenario 3, black swan. Let's be very clear here. This is not a prediction. This is a stress test. Black swans don't follow roadmaps. They show up uninvited. This would require something non-linear. Major payroll platforms integrating, banks leaning into compliant streaming payments, stablecoin payroll becoming normal, Zebec's rails being used far outside crypto-native circles. If that happens, and that's a big if, Zebec could command a meaningfully larger share of the market. In that extreme case, you're talking about a $2 to $3 billion market cap, which would put the token somewhere in the 2 to 4 cent range. Again, not a forecast, just math under extreme conditions. So here's the garage truth. Scenario 1 is boring, but believable. Scenario 2 is execution-driven and realistic if the team delivers. Scenario 3 is rare, but structurally possible. No hopium, no promises, just gears, math, and outcomes. And that's why we do it this way. All right, now that we've run it on the dyno, it's time to give this thing a score. All right, quick disclosure before we hit the dyno. The head of technical analysis in the garage is Lulu. And yes, Lulu is a pig. 4 hooves, a tail. So just to be clear, this is not financial advice. If you're taking advice from a live chart-reading pig, that part is on you. Now, dyno time. Here's how we scored Zebec, category by category. Technology and architecture, 8.5 out of 10 payments first designed. Dedicated execution environment, built to run continuously without choking. Real engineering decisions. Real-world integration, 8.8 out of 10. USDC rails, payroll systems, ACH, FedNow, RTP, cards you can actually swipe. That's real torque. Adoption and usage, 7.8 out of 10. Not viral, not flashy, but real payroll volume and real users. Solid, still growing. Tokenomics and supply pressure, 6.9 out of 10. Large supply and scheduled unlocks create headwinds. Not fatal, but price has to be earned. Execution risk, 7.5 out of 10. Smart strategy, but scaling payroll integrations and compliance is hard. Needs continued discipline. Narrative and market awareness, 7.0 out of 10. Infrastructure rarely trends. Strong long-term, weaker short-term attention. Now we add it up. Overall garage dyno score, 7.9 out of 10. That puts Zebec Network squarely in the category of tuned up and worth watching. Not a meme, not a lottery ticket, a real build that still has to keep proving itself every mile. If you've got a project you want us to throw on the lift, drop it in the comments. This one was a viewer request. And don't forget to check out the site, gurucryptogarage.guru. It's free. That's our way of giving back. All right, Garage, engine's hot, safety off. Let it rip.